Welcome back to the Moms Like Me podcast, powered by Support Now. I can't promise anyone here that you won't need a tissue. I am joined today by the lovely, the powerful, inspiring Lisa Ward. I've had the pleasure of knowing Lisa for a little over 6 months now, and she's going to be sharing just the incredible story of her son, Jace, and sharing more about how she has founded an incredible advocacy group in the world of brain cancer, which is so often overlooked by many. And so I just want to say, first of all, Lisa Ward, thank you for joining us today on Moms Like Me.
Oh, Jordan, it's my pleasure. We think the world of everything you're doing at Support Now.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So Lisa, I have heard your story. It never gets easier to hear. And I would love for you to share in your own words a little bit more about kind of what led you to this journey of DIPG and DMG and brain tumors. And that would set a foundation for us to jump in from there.
Absolutely. Well, there wouldn't be a Tough Together foundation if I hadn't experienced the worst day of my life with my youngest son. And here we go. May 17th, ironically, on DIPG Awareness Day. Our son, who was 20 at the time, this is Jace, he was helping me do some landscaping and had a bad headache. And I said, "Are your eyes still bothering you too?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "You know what? I have an eye appointment. Why don't you take it? Let's find out what's going on." So an eye appointment led to a CT scan, led to an MRI. And yet in that same day, we stood in a small neurosurgeon's office in Kansas City. And I always say he had the kindest eyes. But what he had to say changed our lives. Jace had DIPG, which is a universally terminal brain cancer. He said, "What you have is incurable. It's inoperable. It's not a matter of if it'll kill you, it's a matter of when." And our son just said, "How long do I have?" And the doctor said, "Well, we're going to get you some radiation. We're going to get a second opinion." And he said, "No, doctor. I have a feeling you know very well how long I have. And I need to know because I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid not to make an impact before I do." And the doctor looked at me, hesitated, as you would as a father himself, and I nodded. And he said, "You have 9 months." And Jay said, "Well, I think we're done here. I'll look forward to radiation, I guess. But if it's 9 months, then I need to get busy." And that's exactly what he did. He adopted the mantra, "I can't die, I'm busy." And for 26 months, he navigated his disease. This normally happens in 4 to 12-year-olds. At that time, that was the case. Now adults test for it too, and we find out people as old as 40, 45 are being diagnosed with this brainstem cancer. So just briefly what DIPG does, if you haven't heard of it, and Jordan, I know you have. In fact, you've met so many of our families now. But it will start with an eye, and the eye will just start to turn in. So for Jace, he just had a little bit of double vision in his peripheral when he drove. And then it gets worse and worse until you have double vision. On the opposite side of your body, so that's one eye, the opposite side of your body, you might notice it's harder to text. He noticed it was harder to hold the toothbrush when he brushed his teeth. Or maybe a child would start stumbling a little bit more. Their foot drags a little bit. So what it's doing in that brainstem is it's attacking how the nerve impulses reach the muscles. And so the mouth droops, and soon, over time, a person with DIPG will lose the ability to walk and talk and swallow, the ability to see, and often to hear. And eventually they'll just become locked in their body, much like an ALS patient.
Wow. There's so many questions I could ask, but before I do, I just have to tell you, Jace's response, is, I feel, so telling of the type of person he was. I can't die, I'm busy, and I have to make an impact in the days and the weeks and the months or the years that I have. It truly like exemplifies the gentleman that I've learned about through you, Lisa. And I just have to ask, where did he get that strength from? Where did he get that boldness from? And did he always have that, or was that something he found in himself once he got that diagnosis?
Yeah, I think about that all the time because, Jace was a leader on the football field. He'd lead his team out, during high school. School came really easy to him. But he was just a normal kid, a normal 20-year-old. I mean, he'd even, like, not enrolled in school his sophomore year when he was supposed to, and we had to have a little come to Jesus, so he was working in my law office with me and doing an exceptional job. But at the same time, like, he was the youngest kid in a family of 3, and he wasn't gonna exert more effort than he had to. So when this happened and his right out of the gate response is, "I can't die, I'm busy." Like, I'm not gonna let my friends worry about this. Like, I got stuff I wanna do. But then absolutely, once he met a little girl named Hadley in a town close to ours with big brown eyes that just looked up at him like he hung the moon, then he knew that he had to speak, as he would say, for every child and every mother who had not yet learned to use their voice.
I just
He said, "We know how to advocate, Mom. That's what we do. But if you're 5 with a 25-year-old mom, where would you even know to start? Because the only standard of care in this terrible tumor that kills more kids than any other cancer is radiation, which is exactly what Neil Armstrong's daughter had in 1962
wow.
from the same disease."
I feel like I could talk to you for about like hours about just like the level of maturity and depth that Jace exemplified as soon as he got that diagnosis. It really is just so incredible that that was his first instinct. That was his knee jerk. And that was, again, just the clarity that he had, that was that was the way he was going to live. I heard a quote recently that said, like, "I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of not living life well."
Yeah,
And he
yeah,
completely just, again, just illuminates that.
yeah.
It's beautiful.
Thank
Um,
you.
Lisa, I've just, as a mom myself, it sounds like he took one position
Mhm.
of, I'm going to advocate and I'm going to live and I'm going to do this. How did you respond?
I had to meet him where he was, right? I couldn't let him walk through that alone. So, ooh, every morning I'd cry my eyes out in the shower for 26 months. And then I would dry my eyes and we'd get to work, whatever he wanted to do. So he often met with doctors across the country. He worked for Reed Jobs, who now has Yosemite, who's funding some cancer. So that's Steve Jobs' son, who was just a wonderful mentor to Jace. And he also spoke to Congress often. So every day he would say, "Mom, what do I need? What does the cancer kid need to do today?" And he'd do it.
Wow.
And then he would say, "Okay, is there anything else?" I'm like, "That's up to you. I'm the scheduler. You tell me what you want to do." And if he was done for the day, he'd say, "Okay, I'm gonna go hang with my friends, get my homework done," because he stayed in college during this time. And on campus, he chose not to be a cancer kid. He wanted to be completely normal, be able to drink a beer in the bar if he wanted to, and, go to the ball games until he couldn't.
How, as a mom, did you possibly balance being, Jace's scheduler, as you called it, and also taking care of your other children and their needs, both physically and emotionally?
For me, it was just a little bit easier because my kids were grown and my husband and I could sort of balance them physical needs. But emotionally, you are trying to help them understand that this is something that's not going to be easy for Jace to escape, right? This will probably take his life. So you wanted them to spend time as a family, but at the same time, our oldest son was, newly married, and our daughter was cheering in college, and, life just is busy, right?
Yeah.
And we headed into the pandemic while he was in this. So that was a whole different level. So, just meeting his needs each day, and at the same time, just balancing for the whole family. Like, if this doesn't turn out the way we want to, we do have our faith. And that may not mean Jace is healed on earth. But if it does turn out the way we want to, we're going to celebrate completely. So the moment you get a diagnosis like that, you're going to start grieving. The hardest part, the loneliest part is you're not able to tell your friends and extended family that's what's going on, right? Because to say anything other than hope, hope, hope feels like you're giving up on your kid.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such an
And
interesting
yeah.
balance.
And then, there was also the challenge, Jordan, that we were in Kansas. That's where we live. And there were no treatments other than radiation. So Jace finished radiation 6 weeks. And then what are you supposed to do? Just go make memories? He would say, I have everything I want but a cure. I I don't need to travel. My friends are all here. And so then you're spending all of your time trying to see what is novel and cutting edge and where is that going to take us. And we crisscrossed the US for the best trials at the time. And we can talk in a little bit about the ways we've made that easier for families that follow. And those were out of Jace's suggestions.
I say this all the time. It's not uncommon for people to know about breast cancer. It's not uncommon for people to hear about prostate cancer, pancreatic cancer, even, with children's cancers, you hear a lot about leukemia,
Yep.
ALL, and AML. And given how deadly DIPG is, why is it that so few people know about these brain tumors?
Right. I asked myself that because we didn't know either. But then I can think back to raising money for a little girl with brain cancer, an hour away at one point in time. I think there's a piece of us that is afraid to think too closely about it because what if it happened to our family? Right? Or it'll never happen to our family. I would have been one of those. My kids never went to the doctor. They were never sick. I would never have thought I would be a childhood cancer mom until I was. And that's what families say all the time, right? So it is our job that have been in those trenches to bring more awareness. And we're doing it not to bring awareness to our child who's passed. There's nothing you can do for that. It's so that if it is your child, you have more options than we did.
Yeah.
And you have a community that you can visit with when you're like, how do I balance hope and grief at the same time? All of those things.
So let's talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, share a little bit more about Jace's timeline. So the doctor said 9 months.
Yeah,
How long did he live for? When did he die? Those details would be wonderful.
absolutely. So after he was diagnosed in May of 19, it's coming up on 6 years. That's so hard to believe. It's just surreal, actually. He did 6 weeks of radiation after doing a brainstem biopsy. So it's really important to get to a doctor who performed that. And it took going to Texas, New York, and then to San Francisco before there was someone who would operate on Jace. And that was just to learn as much as possible about the tumor. Then he started a drug that was experimental at the time in clinical trial. And he was able to live at home, play golf, go to college, have some headaches, but not lots of problems for 17 months, which is
Wow.
incredible. And he could not get in that trial at first because he was 4 months too old. Can you imagine, like, the one thing that could help your child and you're told, "Oh, I'm sorry, he's 4 months too old." So some advocates went to bat, and that's what we now do for others too, and said, "Come on, let this kid have it." And it was really successful, and now we work so closely with the company, and by this fall, it will be an approved drug, the first ever for DIPG. Not a
Sure.
cure, but extending stability. And then there came a weekend when it no longer worked, and we didn't really know what was happening at the time. He was on a golf trip with his brother in Oklahoma, but he started stumbling and throwing up, and his eyes, it was difficult to see. And at that moment, because of the advocacy he's done, doctors that were bringing new trials knew about him and always said, if he wants to switch trials, tell us, because it would be great to have an older patient that could tell us all the nuances about what we're trying, right?
Yeah.
You know, we like to think that the doctors that are doing new clinical trials feel like they've got it all figured out. They've worked with the compound or the immunotherapy in a mouse. That's
Yep.
it. And then they're taking it to a child. Just think how fearful they must be too, right? But they know to do nothing is not to do no harm. And so they bravely try these new trials. And so he was the second patient to enter a CAR T cell trial for this tumor type. And you might remember that some years ago, about probably 14 years ago now, Emily Whitehead was the first child in leukemia to use CAR T cell. She almost died that night. And there's a beautiful documentary about it. But instead, it started to work. And she's now, I believe, 13 years cancer-free, no
Wow.
evidence of disease. So Jace went into this, and at the time, he couldn't even put a piece of thin crust pizza in his mouth, and he went in a wheelchair to the hospital. But after the infusion, within a couple of weeks, he could open his mouth to eat big cheeseburgers, which was so important to him. He could walk. In fact, he walked 4 miles a day and went to the Super Bowl. And then it stopped working again, and he did 5 infusions before, on June 30th in 2021, he got off an airplane to come home, met all of his friends at the house. He was so excited after being gone for 6 weeks. But that night, he suffered a brain bleed, and he never recovered. And he passed away on July 3rd of 2021.
Wow.
He was age 22.
Wow. It's really unbelievable. I know there's never enough time with your child, and to know how he was able to extend his life and live it the way he wanted to is so it's truly just so inspiring.
You know, it was so just transformational for me, honestly, to watch. And to watch somebody you raised where you know all the good, bad, and ugly about them, right? And there wasn't a lot of ugly, but all the mischievous, to watch him like do a webinar on Rare Disease Day right before they wheel him into the ICU. Like, hold off, guys. I have to do this and then I can go to the ICU. Or, to hold a Zoom with 15 doctors just after coming out of ICU because he was worried, like, doctors, who refers patients to you? You're the best in the world on this call. Thank you for being on this call with me on a Saturday. I ask you to join me because people keep calling my mom every day, and I feel like I'm not always going to do so well. And on the days that I'm not doing well, I'm afraid she won't answer the calls. And so how do we get patients to you? Because that's what we need to do. Whoever gets them to you. And the doctors had a full discussion, but truly they didn't know how their patients came to them. Maybe from the surrounding areas in metropolitan areas.
Yeah.
Maybe, doctors they knew through school or fellowships referred, but they really didn't know, which made us believe there were probably lots of kids that weren't ever getting to these centers of excellence who had better ways to take care of kids, more quality of life, like not pumping them full of steroids,
Yeah.
right? You take steroids when you're 6 years old for 6 months, you're gonna triple your weight, which means your body's weakening, your face is exploding, you've got bed sores, like, but kids don't need to do that. They
Yeah.
need to know what they should do, but that's not stopping a tumor. And so on that call, it was determined we needed to set up navigators, nurse navigators. And foundation called Chad Tough Defeat DIPG said, Lisa, you take care of Jace. Let us get started on it. And then we knew we needed a tumor board. So the best in the country could hear your case no matter where you were. You didn't have to travel all around the US anymore. Because frankly, Jordan, some of the parents that we help now, they're too young to rent a car and they don't have a credit card they could put a flight on, and they've never flown. So the idea of getting their kiddo across country by themselves just to get a second opinion
Yeah. It's
is
insurmountable, right?
yeah,
How do you,
yeah.
yeah, it's failure to launch.
Yeah. So that was the part about Jace that really surprised me is no matter how bad he felt, he prioritized what we needed to do, in his opinion, to move the needle for the next kids.
I mean, it's again, the whole story is so inspiring. And again, as a mom, I just can't imagine the pride you must have had watching him as an adult navigate this situation that no adult is equipped to handle with such grace, with such charisma, with such fearlessness. I mean, it has to be something that you look back on as a mom with just in disbelief that this is my child. This is my kid that's doing it this way. I mean, that's so inspiring. And I know that this experience led you to so much of your advocacy work with Tough Together. And I'd love for you to share more about all the things that you're doing in the DIPG, DMG world to give families a better chance at perhaps not living, but a quality of life and extending that life for longer. So please share more about everything you're doing with over there.
Yeah, well, everything we do is truly driven by the lessons learned from Jace, but applicable to, I mean, we've met over 500 families now, which sounds crazy, but like 100 a year fighting this same tumor. And so everything we do comes down to, his belief, all I need is a cure. So, first of all, we want to drive research and we want to connect. He was such a connector. And so we want to keep doing that. And so we hold a brainstorm summit every year. And, depending on the year, we might have 400 people that are attending. And there are researchers, there are people from industry. Jordan, you've attended, support. There are also families that are in the fight that are looking for answers, families that are no longer in the fight, but they are fighting for the next children. And they'll come together, and all of a sudden we start having discussions with FDA and NCI about how we get more research over to DIPG and how we make the hurdle for a drug to be approved such that even if it just extends quality of life, we can put it on the table, maybe in combination with other drugs. Because if you've got a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, it means something if they get to start kindergarten and they're not immunocompromised. It
Right.
means something if they get to celebrate their next birthday or get to see their baby sister be born or Christmas. We're in a regulatory environment that thinks like, oh, what's another 6 months? And if you're 80, maybe that's true. Maybe an 80-year-old with prostate cancer
Yeah.
thinks, yeah, what's another 6 months? I don't know. I mean, my parents, I think, would have wanted the other 6 months. But when you're 6, that's 10% of your life expectancy right there that you're adding. So that's important to us. What else is important to us is supporting the tumor board, the nurse navigators, but then walking with every one of these families. And that's how we met you,
Yeah.
because when you get a 9-month diagnosis and you've got an 8-year-old and that 8-year-old's no longer walking and is starting to choke when they eat, you're probably not going to be in the office probably at least one person in the family is going to stay home with that child, right? I mean, I was lucky that I could work from home and older than most parents going through this. So I had built up the ability to have more flexibility. But more often than not, our the parents lose their jobs. They rack up all kinds of credit card debt just to pay the bills. And then if they have to do like we did, go back and forth to California every month, stay outpatient part of the month, but they're living on a Kansas income, that's a whole different ballgame. And
Yeah.
so the other part of what we do is we have something called Live Brave Together, and it's about 30 foundations that all support DIPG families together. And when we need additional resources, the first place we come is Support Now, because you guys are so great in putting things together.
Lisa, if someone finds themselves in this God forbid situation, or they know someone, where is the best website for them to follow, Instagram handle? I would love for you just to give more people calls to action of where they can find out more resources.
Wow, thank you so much. We put together a website called DIPG-OneLink.org. So DIPG hyphen or dash one spelled out ONE link.org. And it's a roadmap. So it's not just what we do at Tough Together. It's really building on that connection. And it is every single place that could help along the way, whether you're new to the fight and you just need bite-sized nuggets, whether you're in the fight, now you want to drill down and find out what am I missing, and then if you're fighting for others. Now, while you're there, you can connect with the DMG community. And the best part is there you meet lots of other families going through the same thing. The other place, of course, if you're drawn to this plight and you'd like to help, we'd love to get you involved, whether that's sending cards or donating or volunteering. Unfortunately, there's nowhere I know of in the country that doesn't have somebody struggling with DIPG. And so we're at Tough, the number 2, Gather, GETHER.org. And on Facebook, it's Jace Ward Tough Together.
Lisa, you're incredible. Your story just never ceases to amaze me. And again, you do such a beautiful job of sharing Jace's story and really showing the world why he was so special. And, I know that he looks at you with such pride, saying, keep going, Mom, you're doing great. And I know it's not easy. For people that don't know this, Lisa, while she does all the things she does with Tough Together and this DIPG One Link, she also works. And so this is not like a full-time thing for you. You're still a mom, a wife. You do so many things. And again, I just cherish the fact that we can play a small role in that, of course, but I feel honored that I know Jace's story and that we have a platform to share more about him and, of course, to share more about you. So, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that someone listening will find inspiration in this, despite the outcome that might happen here on Earth. As always, look forward to future conversations.
Thank you, Jordan. Thanks for having us on.